Ton's world stopped the moment he saw her face in the crowded Balogun Market. His grocery bag crashed to the ground, oranges rolling everywhere, vendors shouting, people cursing at him, but he couldn't hear anything except the pounding of his own heart. It was Folake. His wife. His dead wife. Standing 20 feet away, haggling over tomatoes like she hadn't been buried 3 years ago. Listen. I know this sounds impossible. I know you're thinking, this man has lost his mind from grief. But what if I told you that sometimes the dead don't stay dead? Sometimes they are walking around with different names, living different lives, while the people who love them are left holding nothing but memories and grief dirt under their fingernails. Before we get deeper into this shocking story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to stay updated, because trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. Ton stood there frozen, his breath caught somewhere between his lungs and his throat. The woman had Folake's exact face, the same deep-set eyes that used to look at him with love every morning, the small mole just above her left eyebrow that he'd kissed 1,000 times, the way her nose crinkled when she laughed. Even her voice, floating across the market chaos, carried that familiar melodic tone that once sang him to sleep on difficult nights. "Folake," he whispered, his voice cracking like a teenage boy's. She didn't hear him. She just collected her tomatoes, paid the vendor with a smile that ripped his heart clean out of his chest, and began walking away. Her wrapper swayed with each step in that same graceful rhythm he remembered, the walk that had made him fall in love with her 12 years ago. Ton's feet moved before his brain could catch up. He pushed through the crowd like a madman, ignoring angry shouts, bumping into market women who cursed him in Yoruba. His eyes stayed locked on the woman who wore his dead wife's face like she'd stolen it from heaven itself. "Folake! Folake, wait," he called out, louder this time, desperate now. The woman turned around, her eyes scanning the crowd with confusion. When her gaze landed on Ton, there was nothing. No recognition. No warmth. No guilt. Just the polite bewilderment of a stranger being called by someone else's name. "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong person," she said gently, her eyebrows furrowed with concern. "The concern you show to crazy people on the street." But Ton was close enough now to see everything. The beauty mark, there. The gap between her front teeth, there. Even the small scar on her chin from when she fell off a swing as a child, right there staring him in the face. "Folake, it's me. It's Ton. Your husband." His voice broke on that last word, shattering into pieces. The woman's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. She took a step backward, clutching her bag of tomatoes against her chest like a shield. "Sir, I don't know any Folake. My name is Zainab." "Zainab? You're mistaking me for someone else." "No." Ton shook his head so hard his vision blurred. "No, I buried you 3 years ago. I held your mother as she cried. I. His voice faltered as memories crashed over him, the accident, the hospital, that white sheet being pulled over her face while he screamed. Before Ton could grab her arm, prove somehow that this was real, a tall man appeared beside her. Muscular, protective, his hand immediately on her shoulder. "Is everything alright, Z? Z?" He called her Z like they were close. Like they were. "This man thinks I'm someone else," Zainab explained quietly. "His late wife." The man looked at Ton with a sympathy that burned worse than anger would have. "I'm sorry for your loss, brother. But this is my fiancée, Zainab. We've been together for 4 years. 4 years." The words hit Ton like a slap from God himself. 4 years ago, Folake was still alive. Still waking up beside him every morning. Still laughing at his terrible jokes. Still breathing. That night, Ton couldn't sleep. He'd called his best friend Emeka over, spread out every photo of Folake across his bed, then showed him Zainab's social media profile on his phone. "Jesus Christ," Emeka whispered. "They could be twins." Exactly. Ton jumped up, energized. What if she didn't die? What if she staged it? Brother, you identified her body. Her mother identified her body. There was a funeral. But Ton was already too far gone. Over the next few days, he became something he never thought he'd be, a stalker. He learned Zainab worked at Lily Hospital. He discovered she volunteered at a community center on weekends. He watched, he waited, he compared. Then one afternoon, she confronted him outside the hospital, and when he mentioned Folake's maiden name Okonkwo, everything changed. Zainab's entire body went rigid. What did you say? Okonkwo. Why? Her next words turned his world upside down again. My birth name was Okonkwo too, but I was adopted. The emergency meeting happened in Chima's living room. Tunde, Zainab, Chima, and Emeka all sitting around the coffee table covered in old photographs and documents. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife and serve it for dinner. Adopted. Tunde had repeated the word 20 times since yesterday, like saying it enough would make it make sense. From where? By who? Zainab's voice came out distant, reaching for memories that felt like trying to grab smoke. I don't remember much. I was found wandering near a market in Enugu. No parents, no family. The authorities said I couldn't remember anything, some kind of trauma. The Okoros were childless, and they took me in, gave me a new name, a new life. What year? Tunde demanded, his mathematician's brain already doing calculations. 1999, I was about 5 years old. The room went silent. Even Chima, who'd been skeptical about this whole thing, sat up straighter. Tunde's hands shook as he pulled out his phone, showing Zainab a family photo. Do you recognize anyone here? Zainab stared at the photo for so long that tears started forming in her eyes. Her finger hovered over a woman's face, Mama Blessing, Folake's mother. I've seen her before. In my dreams. She laughed, but it sounded more like crying. I have this recurring nightmare about a woman who looks like her, crying, calling a name I can never quite hear. That's because she's your mother, Tunde said quietly. She had a daughter who was kidnapped from a market when she was 5 years old. They searched for years but never found her. Then she had another daughter, Folake, which means wealth has come home. She was hoping naming her that would bring her first daughter back. Emeka leaned forward. We need a DNA test. That's the only way to know for sure. But with who? Zainab asked. If Folake is dead. Mama Blessing is still alive, Tunde said, his voice catching. Barely. She never recovered from losing both daughters. First one kidnapped, then the other dead in an accident. If you're really her daughter, it might save her life. She's been dying slowly from grief. 3 days later, they sat in a private clinic waiting for DNA results. Tunde had convinced Mama Blessing to come without explaining why, just said it was important, life or death important. The moment Mama Blessing walked through that door and saw Zainab, she collapsed. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. She just folded. Like someone had cut her strings. Her hands reached out, trembling like leaves in a storm, touching Zainab's face like she was checking if it was real. Neoma, she whispered. My Neoma. My good child. The entire room stopped breathing. You remember her name? Tunde asked, shocked. I never forgot, Mama Blessing wept, tears running down her face like rivers. Neoma was my first daughter. Folake was my second. They were twins, identical twins. Born together, but Neoma came out 2 minutes earlier. Always the leader, always protecting her sister. Twins. Zainab breathed the word like a prayer. I had a twin sister. Mama Blessing nodded, her whole body shaking with 25 years of suppressed grief. The day you were taken, we were at the market. I was holding Folake, and you were right beside me. I turned for 1 second to pay for yams, and you were gone. Vanished like smoke. She grabbed Zainab's hands, holding them like they might disappear again. We searched everywhere. Police, private investigators, even native doctors. We spent everything we had. Your father died from the stress 2 years later, still searching. But you had vanished completely. When the DNA result came an hour later, nobody was surprised. The paper just confirmed what Mama Blessings had already knew. Zainab was Neoma Okonkwo, stolen from a market at age 5 and illegally adopted. But this revelation opened a door to something darker. Who orchestrated your adoption? Emeka asked, his journalist instincts kicking in hard. The Okoros, what did they know? Zainab's eyes filled with fresh tears. Papa and Mama Okoro died 5 years ago. Car accident. If they knew something, they took it to their graves. But someone knows, Chima said firmly, his protective instincts on her alert. Someone took a 5-year-old from a market and arranged an illegal adoption. That's not random. That's organized crime. Emeka had already started digging into illegal adoption rings from the late 1990s. What he found made everyone's blood run cold, a pattern of wealthy childless couples paying huge sums for orphans who weren't orphans at all. That night, Tunde received a phone call that changed everything. The voice was distorted, mechanical, terrifying. Stop digging into things that don't concern you. The girl is happy now. Let sleeping dogs lie. Who is this? Tunde demanded, but the line went dead. 2 days later, they found out exactly how serious the threat was. Zainab came home from her hospital shift to find her apartment door wide open. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was moved. But spray-painted across her living room wall in blood-red letters were 3 words that made her legs give out. Forget the past. Someone was watching them. Someone who knew exactly what they were digging into. Someone who'd already killed once to keep this secret buried. And now Zainab realized with crystal clarity, she wasn't just trying to find her past anymore. She was trying to survive it. Chima moved Zainab into his house that same night. No discussion, no argument, just packed her things while she sat there shaking, hired private security, and called the police. The officer who showed up. Inspector Dunlody. Bored. Dismissive. Picking his teeth with a toothpick while Zainab showed him the spray-painted threat on her wall. Maybe it was just regular thieves who got spooked and ran away, he said, not even taking photos. Emeka lost it. Regular thieves who spray-paint warning messages but steal nothing. Are you even listening to yourself? Inspector Dunlody shrugged, closed his notepad without writing a single word. Look, people see things that aren't there all the time. Maybe she painted it herself for attention. The silence that followed could have frozen hell itself. Get out, Chima said quietly, dangerously. Get out of my house before I do something we'll both regret. After Dunlody left, Mama Blessing, who'd been staying with them since the DNA revelation, suddenly grabbed Tunde's arm. Her grip was stronger than an old woman's should be. I just remembered something, she whispered, eyes wide with realization. There was a nurse at the twins' birth. Sister Tunde. She was too interested in them. Kept asking if we wanted to give one up for adoption. Said twins were a burden, that we couldn't afford 2 babies. She started crying again. We were poor, yes, but they were our miracles. I refused, told her to mind her business. But after Neoma was taken, I always wondered. Emeka found Sister Tunde in 3 days. She was working at a private hospital in Abuja, close to retirement, probably thinking her sins were buried in the past. She was wrong. The moment Emeka showed her Zainab's photo, her coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Her face went pale as death itself. I didn't know they would take her like that, Sister Yoton confessed, her voice shaking like an earthquake. I just passed information to Madam Ginika. She ran an organization. Wealthy couples who couldn't have children paid her to find them babies. You sold information about newborn twins. Emika's voice could have stripped paint. I told her about the family's financial struggles. I thought they would approach them properly, legally. Maybe offer money that could help them raise the other child better. I swear to God, I didn't know she would orchestrate a kidnapping. Madam Ginika repeated the name, tasting poison. Who is she? She was powerful. Connected to politicians, businessmen, even police officers. That's why these cases never got solved. She had protection from the very top. Emika caught the past tense immediately. She died 7 years ago. Cancer. But her organization? I don't know if it died with her. Emika's investigation over the next week uncovered a conspiracy that would have made the devil himself impressed. Madam Ginika had run a sophisticated child trafficking operation for 20 years under the cover of a legal adoption agency called Blessed Beginnings. The records he found, hidden in old court documents, buried in archive files, painted a horrifying picture. The Okoros, Zainab's adoptive parents, had paid 500,000 naira in 1999. The receipt said, healthy 5-year-old girl with no living relatives. They were lied to, Zainab said firmly when she saw the documents, defending the only parents she'd ever known. Papa and Mama Okoro were good people. They loved me. They wouldn't have knowingly bought a stolen child. But the worst discovery was yet to come. Emika had pulled the police report for Folake's death 3 years ago. Car accident, they said. Brake failure, they said. Tragic, they said. But Emika knew how to read between lines, and what he found made his blood turn to ice. He called an emergency meeting at Chima's house, his face grave as a funeral. There's something you all need to know about Folake's death. Town's head snapped up. What about it? The accident that killed her, the brake failure, I pulled the police report and the mechanic's assessment. Folake's car was only 6 months old. Premium model. Those brakes don't just fail. What are you saying? Tom's voice was barely human. The mechanic noted something the police report conveniently left out. The brake lines didn't fail naturally. They were cut. The room exploded. What? Tom stood up so fast his chair flew backward. Folake was murdered. The investigation was closed in 2 days. 2 days for a potential murder. And guess who signed off on it? Emika pulled out a document. Inspector Dunlody. Mama Blessing began wailing, not crying, wailing. The sound of a mother who'd lost everything twice. Both my daughters taken from me. Zainab held the elderly woman, her own face wet with tears for a sister she'd never got to know but who died trying to find her. But why? Tan asked, his voice breaking into pieces. Why would anyone want to kill Folake? The answer came from the last person they expected. A woman named Rashidi contacted Emika after seeing his inquiries online. She insisted on meeting in a busy restaurant, kept looking over her shoulder like death was following her. I was Madam Ginika's secretary for 15 years, she said in a hushed voice. Before she died, she told her daughter everything. Her daughter, Kolechi, inherited the business, not the legitimate front, but the real business. The trafficking. It's still running. Chima asked, horrified. Smaller now, more careful. But yes. And here's what you need to understand, Madam Ginika was paranoid. She kept files on everyone. Every child sold, every parent who bought them, every official she bribed. She called them her insurance files. If anyone ever came after her, she could bring down half of Nigeria's elite with her. Where are these files now? Kelechi has them. And 3 years ago, your Folake, she nodded at Tunde, she was working as a social worker, investigating illegal adoptions. She'd started looking into cases from 1999, the year her sister was taken. She was getting too close. The truth hit them like lightning. Folake was killed because she was about to expose them, Tunde whispered. And now you're doing the same thing, Rashida said urgently, standing to leave. That's why you're being threatened. That's why Danladi is blocking the investigation, he's on Kelechi's payroll. Has been for years. You need to be very careful. That warning came too late. The next evening, as Zainab left her shift at the hospital, 2 men appeared from nowhere. They tried to force her into a van, but Zainab fought like a woman possessed. She screamed, kicked, beat, using the self-defense training Chima had insisted on. Hospital security came running. The men fled, but the message was crystal clear, we can get to you anywhere. That night, Chima made a decision that would change everything. We are going to the media. We make this so public they can't touch us without exposing themselves. Emeka worked through the night, writing an article that will shake Nigeria to its core. He named names, Inspector Danladi, Kelechi Ginika, the trafficking ring, the murdered social worker, everything. The article went viral in 3 hours. 50,000 shares in 6 hours. By hour 12, the government had no choice but to act. A special task force was assembled. Inspector Danladi was suspended immediately. And Kelechi Ginika. She was arrested at the airport trying to flee the country, her mother's insurance files found in her possession, files that would expose crimes going back 25 years. The war was over. But the battle for justice had just begun. The trials became national news. Every day, new revelations shocked the country as Madam Ginika's insurance files revealed the depth of the conspiracy. Kelechi Ginika stood in court, defiant until the end, but the evidence was overwhelming. Life in prison for child trafficking and conspiracy to murder. When they read the verdict, she didn't even blink. Inspector Danladi got 15 years for corruption, obstruction of justice, and accessory to murder. The look on his face when they led him away in handcuffs, that was justice. But the files revealed more than just their crimes. 73 stolen children were identified, their real identities finally uncovered. 7 of them, now adults, were reunited with biological families they never knew existed. A state senator who'd purchased 3 children over the years was arrested at his mansion, crying about his reputation while forgetting about the families he'd destroyed. Rashida testified despite death threats, entered witness protection, but sent Zainab one last letter, thank you for having the courage I never had. You saved children I helped steal. You gave me a chance to do one good thing with my life. 6 months later, everything had changed. Mama Blessing's health had improved so dramatically that doctors called it miraculous. The woman who'd been dying from grief was now in her garden every morning, growing tomatoes and telling stories. Tell me about her, Zainab asked one afternoon, helping her tend the flowers. About Folake. I want to know everything about my sister. Mama Blessing smiled through tears that were now part joy, part sorrow. She was fearless, just like you. Always protecting others. Became a social worker because she wanted to help vulnerable children. She paused, touching Zainab's face gently. She was investigating those adoption cases not just for work. She was looking for you. She never stopped believing you were alive somewhere. Tunde visited regularly now, finding comfort not in Zainab looking like Folake, but in her being a living connection to the woman he'd lost. He and Chima had become brothers in this journey. Do you still see Folake when you look at me? Zainab asked him one day. He thought carefully. At first, yes. But now I see Neoma. I see the sister Folake spent her whole life hoping to find. She would have loved you. She would have been so proud that you finished what she started. We finished it, Zainab corrected. You, me, Chima, Emeka, even Mama. We are all connected now, like a family forged in fire. The wedding happened on a perfect Saturday morning. Mama Blessing walked Zainab down the aisle, standing tall and proud. In Zainab's bouquet were 2 sets of flowers, white roses for the life she was beginning with Chima, and yellow lilies for the sister who died searching for her. Tunde stood among the guests, no longer haunted by ghosts but grateful for the strange twist of fate that had led him to that market. He thought seeing Folake's face again would destroy him. Instead, it had uncovered truth, brought justice for his wife's murder, and given Mama Blessing a reason to live. After the ceremony, Zainab found Tunde standing alone at the memorial table, looking at Folake's photo surrounded by candles. "She brought us all together, didn't she?" Zainab said softly. Even in death, she was still protecting people, still fighting for justice. Tunde nodded, his eyes wet but peaceful. "She would have been so happy today. Seeing you in that dress, seeing Mama Blessing smile again, seeing justice finally done." As the celebration continued around them, Mama Blessing stood to make a toast. The room fell silent as the elderly woman raised her glass, her voice strong and clear. "To my daughter Folake, whose courage lives on in every child saved from trafficking, in every family reunited, in every truth that refuses to stay buried." She turned to look at Zainab, tears streaming down her face. "And to my daughter Neoma, who came back to me after 25 years. They stole her as Neoma, raised her as Zainab, but she will always be my child, my good child, my blessing that finally came home." The room erupted in applause, and in that moment, surrounded by love and justice, the ghost of the past finally found peace. Later that night, as Zainab and Chima danced at their reception, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. A chance encounter in a market. A face that shouldn't exist. A truth that refused to stay buried. "What are you thinking about?" Chima asked, holding her close. "How sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things," she said. "If I hadn't been kidnapped, Folake would still be alive. But if Folake hadn't died, I would never have been found. It's like destiny had to break us all apart to put us back together stronger." "That's deep for a wedding night," Chima teased gently. "That's what happens when you marry a woman with 2 names and 2 lives," she laughed, and it was Folake's laugh, and Neoma's laugh, and Zainab's laugh all at once. Because she was all of them. The stolen child, the found woman, the bridge between worlds. And finally, she was home.